It's a funny thing. While marketers are out there chasing the absolute latest AI trend, the highest converting digital ad copy, the stuff that really works, relies on a secret formula that was developed over a century ago. It's this paradox that's sitting right at the heart of modern advertising. We're surrounded by these dazzling visuals, super complex algorithms, and AI tools that promise to completely change how we sell. We're told to innovate, disrupt, find the next big thing. And yet, the foundation of persuasion, the very thing that turns a passive glance into a decisive click, has stayed stubbornly, powerfully the same for over 120 years. The secret isn't in the future, it's buried in the past.
So, the question we should be asking isn't about finding the next new thing. It's about rediscovering a timeless truth. What is this simple four-step structure that's outlasted every single marketing trend and continues to quietly power the most profitable campaigns online? Well, the answer isn't in technology. It's in a deep, unchanging understanding of human psychology. It's a roadmap for a journey, a predictable, emotional, and psychological journey that every single customer has to take before they decide to buy anything, whether they know it or not.
And this brings us right to the great paradox of our industry. On one hand, we are obsessed with fleeting trends, right? Generative AI, viral video formats, bigger and bigger budgets for slick visuals. We've somehow convinced ourselves that a more beautiful ad is a better ad. But on the other hand, the real drivers of conversion are these timeless principles, a solid grasp of human psychology, and, this is the big one, an understanding that persuasion happens in a specific, non-negotiable emotional sequence. The shiny new tools are tempting. They promise shortcuts. But this illusion, this belief that design is more important than structure, is where most ad budgets just go to die.
So, in this explainer, we are going to pull back the curtain on this century-old secret. We'll start with a modern problem, what we're calling the conversion paradox. Then, we'll journey back to 1898 to uncover this formula's origin. We'll break down the four-step conversion engine itself, explore the deep psychology of commitment that makes it so darn powerful, and then we'll move from theory to actual practical mastery. And finally, we'll reframe your entire approach by looking at your customer's emotional journey. Okay, let's start with the crisis that makes this framework more relevant today than ever before.
First off, we have to understand the world we're living in. We are in the middle of what you could call a crisis of the click. The cost per click, or CPC, on all the major ad platforms is just relentlessly climbing. And what that means is that every single ad impression has become a really high-stakes event. Think of it like having a single shot at a target. You just can't afford to miss. There's no room for that slow, gentle brand building that might pay off in a few months. An ad has to work, and it has to work right now. This intense pressure is exactly why a reliable, predictable formula isn't just nice to have, it's absolutely essential for survival.
And here's the core of that problem. An ad that doesn't have a clear psychological roadmap is, frankly, destined to fail. I don't care how stunning the visuals are, how clever the one-liner is, or how much money you spent on production. If that ad doesn't systematically manage users' attention, build their interest, create real desire, and then guide them to a clear action, it's just noise. It's an expensive piece of digital art that people will scroll right past without a second thought. Structure isn't just important. In this world of high-cost clicks, it is everything.
So, to solve this very modern crisis, we have to look to the past. The solution isn't hiding in some new app or algorithm. It's in a framework that was thought up long before the internet, television, or even radio existed. This idea was born in an era of face-to-face persuasion. It just goes to show you that while technology changes human nature, how we're persuaded, what grabs our interest, what drives us to act, that stuff doesn't change. We're going from the age of personal salesmanship straight to the age of the infinite scroll, and guess what? The same rules apply.
This framework is called AIDA, and it was first codified way back in 1898 by a man named Elias St. Elmo Lewis. Now, he wasn't thinking about social media feeds, he was trying to map out the DNA of a successful face-to-face sales pitch. Fast forward to the 1950s, and the titans of Madison Avenue had adapted it for the golden age of print, using it to structure those iconic magazine ads that really defined a generation. And now, here we are in the 2020s, and it's found its most critical job yet, becoming the essential tool for navigating the high-stakes digital world and solving that very CPC crisis.
So the radical shift that made AIDA so relevant today was this realization. A single, standalone ad has to take a completely cold prospect on a full emotional journey in the space of a single scroll, often in just a few seconds. It has to satisfy 4 sequential requirements. It can't just throw information out there.
It has to first earn attention, then give enough substance to hold interest, then build an emotional case for desire, and finally, present a clear path to action. If any one of these steps is missing, or, and this is key, if they're out of order, the entire structure just collapses, and the money is gone. So let's pop the hood and see how this thing actually works. This isn't just a creative checklist, okay? It's a finely tuned psychological roadmap, and it's designed to guide a person from a state of passive distraction to one of active commitment. So let's break down the sequence step by step.
The sequence is simple, it's elegant, and it is non-negotiable. Attention, interest, desire, action. Each step builds directly on the last one, creating this cascade of escalating commitment. Think of it like climbing a ladder. You can't just skip a rung, right? You have to get your footing on one level before you can safely move up to the next. If you ask for action before you've built desire, you just create resistance. If you try to build interest without first getting attention, well, you're talking to an empty room. This is the precise emotional and logical flow that underpins every single successful ad. It all begins with attention. In a world of infinite content, the first job of your ad isn't to sell, it's simply to be seen. This requires a pattern interrupt. Your user is in this hypnotic state of passive scrolling, just thumbing through an endless feed of familiar stuff. Friends' photos, news headlines, memes. Your ad has to be the thing that shatters that pattern. It needs a headline, an image, a video hook that is so surprising, so counterintuitive, or so targeted to their specific pain that it literally forces their thumb to stop. You have maybe 2 seconds to do this. If you fail here, nothing else matters. Okay, so you've earned that split second of attention. Now the clock is ticking. You have to immediately justify it by building interest. This is the education phase. The user is now thinking, okay, you got me to stop, why should I keep reading this? Your copy has to deliver. It needs to provide a relevant fact, a surprising statistic, or introduce the unique mechanism behind your solution. So many ads fail here because they jump straight to the hard sell. Instead, you need to give their logical brains something to chew on, proving that this isn't just clickbait, there's real substance here.
Now this next step, desire. This is where most ads completely fall apart. They get stuck talking about features. But desire isn't about logic, it's the emotional bridge. This is where you pivot from what your product is to what the user's life will be like with it. You stop talking about specs and you start painting a vivid picture of their transformed reality. This is all about outcome visualization. You make them feel the relief, the status, the peace of mind. You're not selling a product, you're selling a future, better version of themselves.
And only after you have built that emotional desire can you ask for the action. The key here is to make it as simple and frictionless as humanly possible. The call to action, your CTA, it's got to be crystal clear and unambiguous. Don't give them options. Don't make them think. You've just taken them on this emotional ride, and their cognitive load, their mental energy is high. Making them puzzle over what to do next is just a recipe for them to leave. Your job is to give them one simple, low-risk, obvious next step. Click here to learn more. Download the free guide. Tell them exactly what to do to complete the journey.
So we've seen the what, now let's dig into the why. Why is this specific sequence so incredibly effective? Well, the answer lies in some of the most powerful principles of behavioral science. The AIDA Framework isn't just good marketing, it's basically an applied lesson in human psychology. It works not because of some clever trick, but because it's perfectly aligned with how we are all fundamentally wired to make decisions.
The entire system is built on a really powerful psychological principle known as sequential commitment, which comes from Dr. Robert Cialdini's famous work on influence. Cialdini's principle of consistency says that once we make a choice or take a stand, we feel this internal pressure to behave consistently with that commitment. I mean, think about it. If you tell a friend you're starting a new diet, you're much more likely to stick to it. We all want to see ourselves as consistent people. AIDA brilliantly taps into this fundamental human drive.
So here's how this works in practice. An AIDA ad doesn't ask for one big yes. Instead, it engineers a series of tiny micro yeses. When a user stops scrolling, that's their first yes. They've committed a moment of their attention. When they decide to read the first line of copy, that's a second yes, a commitment of interest. When they let themselves imagine that positive outcome, that's a third, more emotional yes. By the time you present the final call to action, the click doesn't feel like some big decision. It feels like the natural, consistent conclusion to a series of choices they've already made.
The desire stage has its own powerful little engine running too. It works by creating what's called an emotional gap. The copy first subtly reminds the user of their current, not-so-great reality, their frustration, their problem, their unmet need. Then it paints that vivid picture of the awesome future outcome. Your product is then framed as the one simple essential bridge to get them across that gap.
This creates a powerful psychological tension, an itch that the user suddenly feels a deep urge to scratch. And the only way to resolve it is to take the action you're offering. Okay, understanding the theory is one thing, but applying it with precision is a whole other ballgame. So let's transition from the why to the how. How do you take this framework and consciously engineer it into your own ads to get predictable, repeatable results? This isn't about guesswork, it's about discipline, and it really comes down to focusing your energy on the right parts of the sequence.
There are 3 core rules for mastery. First, you have to prioritize attention and interest. Focus about 70% of your creative energy right here, because if you don't stop the scroll and immediately give them a reason to stay, nothing else you do is going to matter. Second, you must meticulously engineer that desire bridge. Never just list a feature. You have to explicitly connect it to a powerful emotional transformation, because emotion is what drives decisions. And third, minimize friction at all costs. The call to action has to be singular, clear, and effortless, because any confusion at that final step can break the entire chain of commitment.
Let's make this super concrete. This table shows you exactly how to engineer desire. On the left, you've got these dry, logical features: water-resistant coating, 15 minutes setup time, data encryption. Okay, they inform, but they don't sell. Now look at the right. These are the emotional transformations. Peace of mind on a rainy day. Get your weekends back. Your family's privacy is protected. See the difference? This is the crucial translation you have to perform. You have to move from the what to the so what for the customer.
And that brings us to the core insight, the fundamental truth that makes this entire framework so timelessly powerful. When you strip everything else away, you realize that you're not just writing ad copy. You are charting and guiding a very specific and predictable emotional journey for your customer.
Everything we have talked about boils down to this one number: 4. 4 non-negotiable, sequential steps are required to guide a user's complete journey from a distracted skeptic mind mindlessly scrolling to an interested prospect weighing the facts, to an emotional human desiring a better future, and finally, to a committed buyer taking a decisive action. 4 steps. That is the complete emotional and psychological journey you have to build.
In the end, what this century-old formula teaches us is that the best marketing isn't about pushing people through a funnel with clever tactics, it's about pulling them toward value. It works because it respects their psychology and completes an emotional journey that they were already hoping to take. It provides the clear, low-risk path to transformation that we are all ultimately looking for. So the question you have to ask yourself isn't about what new tool to use, but about the structure you're building. Are you building a clear path for your customer, or are you just creating more noise?